Okay, good morning. Some days just don't start off the way you want to start off. I ordered some food with some coffee because I wanted the coffee. And making the coffee right now is not possible. So I ordered coffee and the one part I wanted didn't arrive. First world problems, I know. It's raining. And I've got this to look forward to. No, today I'm going to start with trying to look at the design of the application, like try and get something working, some ideas and maybe some things working. I'm going to start with the workflows though, right? So localhost 5000, my favorite tool. Make sure I close one down before I open up 10 more. Yeah, that's fine. Close that one down. Actually, close that entire set of tabs down. That's fine. Okay, so let's start a new one. So I have and I don't know quite how to draw this, and I don't think using the stylus is going to help me do this either. I don't think that's going to be charged anyway. I got to figure out some workflows, right? And I got to figure out what information I'm going to gather so I can figure out my design, right? This isn't somewhere I've got a lot of experience with, something I've got a lot of experience with, because it's often done for me when I'm developing applications. I obviously have, normally have UI UX people or someone else dictating the design. So as a developer, this is a newer area for me to move into as owning this piece. I know I'm going to focus on planning, right? And the planning is going to be based around this concept of a planning item. And a planning item is going to, actually, you know what I'm best doing here? Not using Excalidraw. I'm best using something like mind mapping tools. I'm best using mind mapping. Maybe Miro. Nope. Miro's down. That's not very good. MindMeister is that one. Make sure I don't see anything I don't want to see. Okay. I obviously used these guys a long time ago. 10 years ago. That's interesting. Yep, I used them 10 years ago. So let's start with planning. Let's see if they go dark mode actually, because that's always worthwhile figuring out. Skip. I don't need all the on-screen prompts. I just want to see. Let's just jump. Preferences. Appearance. With that one. Okay. Figuring out tools is not something I wanted to start with today. Neil, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Okay. So let's just go back to SkyDraw. We can use this, it's fine. So around planning item, we have actually I just need the text. We've got requirements. We have attachments, notes. So you'll be able to add planning items, add requirements to planning items. Planning items will be, they'll have a status. It can be attached to projects, or rather labeled as projects. They have what else do they have? So for anyone joining the stream for the first time, I am building an Agile project management platform. Today I'm focusing a little bit on the design, as I've had a recent insight into the fact that if I don't concentrate a little on the design and the workflows, I'm going to end up creating something in the back end that isn't going to fit what is in the front end. So I need to spend some time on the front end aspects, maybe come up with some designs and build out some pieces. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to just make sure I understand the pieces that I actually am trying to build right this second. So this platform is going to focus primarily around the planning aspect, right? It's going to focus on allowing people to gather information and to kind of build a picture of what they want, so that we can then take that picture and make it actual stories without the project management team building the stories and it fitting like what the developers expect, right? So the idea here is that this is a gathering tool that will allow a product manager to kind of brainstorm a little bit, even doing this sort of stuff, right? And be able to kind of figure out some of the rough edges before they present it to developers. When developers get hold of it, they'll be able to kind of say, we don't like that, though, we don't think that's there, no, this needs to be here, this team does that work, this team does that work. and they can kind of break it down and then build the stories that are appropriate for the developers to work on off of a core object. This could be one story. This could be many stories. It doesn't. There's no definition, and that's the problem with planning. Often is that we have a product manager go off and develop this story and this template, etc., and it fits neatly if they do it well in terms of describing why we're doing something and whatever. But it doesn't allow for change. It doesn't allow for adaptation very easily when it comes to time to do the story. So if it's like, oh, well, no, actually, this is too big, we need this to be 2 stories, then that product manager's got to turn around pretty quickly and develop another story and break that initial things up. So if they spend a lot of time, it can be quite demoralizing, as opposed to then have to go, oh, well, now I've got to do this. So people cut corners when those sorts of things happen. So the idea here is that this is not a story tool, it is a planning tool that will generate stories that the developers can then focus on, with hopefully clearer requirements and more accountability there. So assignment is a thing. Notifications is a thing. Promotion is a thing. Good afternoon, Mr. Jones. How are you doing? Let's do this, and then let's do architect sloppiness. I'm an artiste. Not too bad. So I'm just kind of going through a bit of an exercise of mind mapping in terms of the planning item. Just trying to figure out the actual components I want. So attachments to a planning item don't make sense, right? They really do live there. Notes live there and there, right? Can't attach them when it's just words. Which is fine. I'm not messing around with I'm going to put validation here, because that needs to have that needs rules to it. Reporting. Yeah, reporting is a separate thing on this. Status is status is in progress, or cancelled, or promoted, I suppose. Right. So promotion has um, um, hi Sally, how you doing? Do you think getting really good at .NET and C# is a solid investment for the future? It seems like it's used heavily in the corporate world. I'm still a student though, doing some projects on the side and had an internship working with .NET. I mean, there's still a lot of .NET work out there. There's still a lot of jobs out there. I mean, obviously, it depends on your local market as to or what your plans are once you finish school. But I know there's a lot of jobs still out there for .NET. So I think it is a good investment. If nothing else, I think with the .NET ecosystem, because of the way that the tools are used, there's a lot of pieces to touch. So there's a lot of cloud-based stuff. There's a lot of different tooling. There's a lot of not just web that's possible with it. And even if .NET wasn't the future, even if .NET does start to fade away, the things you'll learn from doing it, and because there is an established market out there with a lot of big applications running on it, you're set up anyway, right? Because you will be aware of those things. I don't know of any major platforms built on top of PHP or built on top of. I mean, PHP is falling away a little bit more recently. Built on top of Python. I mean, there's websites and stuff. I'm not saying there's not big websites built on these things, but the architecture, the back-end pieces, all those things. WordPress is built on PHP, but they're moving away from PHP. The client is now built in pretty much all JavaScript. Right, thank you. By the way, I haven't seen anyone run Excalibur on localhost. I just find it's more reliable, right? Because if the site's not available or I have issues with it, then I can actually still have these drawings, and also they're not up there. So I kind of like having it on local. But yeah, even WordPress is moving away from using PHP a lot, and they're the biggest reason for they're the biggest hey, look, PHP can do amazing things. But their new client front end is all JavaScript, I believe. Well, obviously with a PHP backend, but it used to be built on PHP. So I was reading an article that PHP usage has fallen away 40% in the last couple of years. It really isn't the future, I don't think. Unless PHP 8 and 9 are significantly better. I just think it's the way the technology is. So .NET, I think there's enough of a market share. There's enough variety in the jobs that you could get with it that even if it isn't the future, you're going to learn all those techniques, all those tools that are beyond the ecosystem, right? Because if you go into some cloud-based development, right, you're going to learn more about storage options and networking and building an application in the cloud, and the options available to you. And as an aside of that, you're going to learn more about what other languages exist and how they're used and how they're used effectively. One of the things I want to do for this application is I want to do some stuff where I can say, hey, look, because of the way that the application is architected, then I can use a different language to do a certain job. I just don't know what that job looks like right now, and I want to do something that's kind of realistic. I don't want to just pull in Rust or something like that and say, hey, look, I can consume the messages from Kafka using Rust, and I can process them. Well, I can do that in C#. There's nothing stopping me from doing that right now, and I doubt that C# would be significantly slow enough that Rust is going to have an advantage. So maybe notification parsing, maybe doing some sort of analytics stuff might be better in a certain language or a certain framework, and hooking those tools up to kind of prove that it is possible, and you don't have to deviate from the design to achieve it. So yeah, wizard. Extract stories. So again, the purpose of the promotion wouldn't be to point it; it would just to identify from all this what's going to happen. So the downside to not using a dedicated mind mapping tool. Initiatives. Well, not initiative 6. Initiatives are the concept of wrapping planning items up into kind of groups. So you might create an initiative and add in planning items. Don't need to make that confused with a label. Okay. So when we're talking about initiatives, progress, alerts again, because you want to know at the initiative level, things like that. So if you create an initiative and it has several planning items in it, you do want to know about things that happen on it, like initiatives are progressing. I'm having a bad time with these glasses today. I'd be interested to know what methods you use personally to identify what you need to do. Like, what tools do you like to use? Or do you like mind maps? Because I don't often use mind maps, and I don't think they're a very good personal tool. I think they're a collaborative tool normally, because you just kind of throw things down. I'm only doing this as a mind map because it's a good way of thinking through what I need to actually design right now. But this is all focused on planning, right? This is all, this is planning, not planning item, right? So yeah, again, on that topic, right? Then technically, apart from this branch, just lives there now. Then no, not tools for using my mouse. I'm just, and you as a developer, if you're planning something, if you're kind of brainstorming something, what techniques and tools do you personally use? Do you use mind maps? Do you find them helpful? Do you find them obstructive? So, planning items, if I'm being accurate, right? Planning, what's that? Right. I'm sometimes doing mind maps in Whimsical, but it's mostly just to get a visual overview. Yeah. Again, when I'm doing personal projects, I'm not obviously thinking of them necessarily like this, but this project is so big that I don't really have much of an option in terms of trying to figure things out. I mean, assignment, promotion, review date, etc. They are all planning item related, but they're general concepts as well, right? I want to assign a planning item. Initiatives aren't going to get assigned because there could be many project managers working as part of an initiative, right? Or several planning items that are completely seemingly unrelated could evolve into an initiative. And the annoying thing there is initiative. So I keep using this word projects. Initiatives are kind of weird because do you scale vertical or horizontal over time? I think I was going to contribute to that a little bit there. So initiatives and projects, right? If an initiative is a grouping of planning items, and again, initiatives stay inside of planning. They are not a story tool, right? In my mind, initiatives are a kind of project. They are, hey, we want to do, we want to introduce something, or we want to change something, or, we need to update the UI on all these different things, right? Then that would be an initiative, and items would get created under the initiative that would allow it to achieve that. So an initiative and a project are almost hand in hand at that point in terms of the way you think of them. Again, I've been looking at mobbing, right? So Monday.com. Software updates, maybe if you want to update once every 3 years because of external forces, you'd rather pick it slower than all at once. Right. Or security. If you've done a security audit, if you've done a pen test audit, and there's a lot of stuff that's come from that, right? Then there might be planning items created for, we need to tackle this issue globally, right? So you'd create several planning items for that. And those planning items might be kind of large. And again, that's why I'm doing this as a planning item, is because I think that scope is harder for the planner to break down. It's easy for the developer to break down, but the planner can kind of group it by like type. Yeah, so several planning items might go into an initiative. An initiative is just a kind of a goal to achieve things. So, and to give you an overview of where you are with the different things rather than dumping it into planning items. And again, what I'm trying to do here is not not make this story related, right? The goal is to very much make it planning related and not get anywhere near stories, because this sort of stuff needs some refinement and what's the word? Maturation before it becomes actual story work. And this way, this happens without it actually being in front of the developers. Basically, as the code goes, you want to redesign it, not when it gets so painful you have no choice. Right. So an initiative might be, constant updates. It might be long term. It might be short term initially. But initiatives can continue, and you could label it as an initiative. So on that topic, right, initiatives is a label that you can attach to a planning item, right? So notifications, reminders, not notifications. So actually that's more in the reporting aspect, right? And even that's kind of progress related. And then we kind of do have, so does an initiative have a review date? I don't think it does. But again, as a dev, you don't care about initiatives. The entire purpose of this is to try and avoid development, right? As a developer, you don't care about initiatives because that's not your concern. An initiative is a planning tool. And again, if you make the developer, and that's part of the problem, right? If you start making developers think about initiatives, you give them too much to track. Developers should care about the mess of the code base, right? So okay. Let me think about how this one was. So I go to my manager and I say, hey, we have an issue. We have this piece of code that is repeated hundreds of times throughout the code base, and we need to clean it up. But it's hooked into a critical component, right? So I might work with the product manager or whoever to identify the areas that need to be tackled, and they create a few planning items for updating those areas, and they go off and they create those planning items. So we wrap them up under an initiative that is, critical security updates. I'm not saying the developer wouldn't review them. The developer could be notified of changes, right? But the planning owns them. So again, you could subscribe to it as a notification, as a hey, progress is being made on it. But all you're going to know there is that it's got requirements added, it's got notes added, right? So if you want to follow deeper on that process, you could do, I suppose. This is a reaction scenario though. Take updates, bit easy to understand. Say you want to update one section of code once a month, right? You can create planning items and then create an initiative to track all those things that need to be done. So from this perspective, again, I kind of need to break out notifications. So you have 50 repositories and need to update one section of one repository once a month. Maybe each repository has 3 sections to update. Okay. Right. I mean, that would come under an initiative, absolutely, because you'd be constantly tracking that things are happening against it. And you want to know, like, does an initiative have a time frame, or is an initiative a grouping, that you can see progress on, like how many are completed, how many have been cancelled, how many have been promoted to stories, right? Do you care about where the stories are on that initiative? Probably do. So rather than update 150 things in 3 years, you want every month update something. Right, but that's a scheduling concern. That's not a planning. I mean, that's that's kind of funny. Because it is a planning concern, but not that type of planning, right? That's a time planning concern rather than an actual concern of the gathering the requirements, etc. But again, it's another word that we have, right? We have this we like project is a blurry word. Scheduling versus planning, right? We call it planning when we're talking about preparing for something, but we're also planning a trip or whatever. We're planning, oh, well, on this day we'll do this, on this day. So you're time planning anyway. So scheduling and planning, there's some right. But so the initiative, I think to put a time window on an initiative is artificial. I think basically an initiative can be evolving, it can be open for a long time. The point of the initiative is overview, right? Now, you might care about the stories created from initiatives or created from planning items under an initiative, right? So is that a reporting or progress? I think that's a progress thing, right? You don't really care about, you don't need to know the granular details, but progress, you need to know, are the stories completed? Like, because a single planning item could create a dozen stories. It could do. It might not do. It might never do, right? But you'd want to see, hey, those stories of that planning item are making progress, right? So again, where are they? You kick the can on the initiatives occasionally. Yeah, I'd want to be able to. Yeah, you don't necessarily need an initiative to have. So I'm going to actually tag it no defined time frame. So there's no review date attached to an initiative, right? A review date is a planning item piece. Right. Um, I wonder if initiatives should point at scheduling. In what way? Maybe Gantt chart or something. Hmm. I don't need the word wizard in there. It's a waste of time. Extract stories. Um, that comes real low down the ladder. Hello, I'm back and ready to rock. How's the stream? Hey Apex, how you doing? Stream's okay. We're doing okay. Today, I'm doing a little bit of a different thing in that I am focusing a little bit on the design of the application. I'm trying to what I'm right now trying to do is map out the features of planning that I have so far and what I want them to be. Like how important are they? How they're going to work, how they're going to attach, and then we're going to go to a little bit of UI design. So I was watching a video, and actually, I should bring the video up. Or I should bring at least link to the YouTuber, because it is kind of interesting. Because this guy is a very interesting guy to watch. I think I mentioned it before, but yeah, he builds a couple of apps. So like initiatives you maintenance essentially, yeah. So let me put it in Discord. Useful learning link sharing. There you go. Useful links. Okay, so you probably want to manage how much maintenance work you do versus feature work, both probably making money. So you mean in terms of scheduling, like actual scheduling? I mean, no, in terms of dev time, I don't want to spend 100% on either. Right, but that again, that's a challenge for. So planning in this perspective is actually gathering the information and getting the information so that the stories can be built without just being placeholders in the backlog, right? That no one knows why they're there anymore. So the intent of this process is very much to say, here's what we know. Here's what we know we want. Here's what we know we need. And then work with developers to kind of extract those stories. You take the requirements into the stories. The stories become the actual work to be done. So obviously some of this information is going to carry across in some respects. And it's going to carry across in so much as it's going to be produced from the planning system. It's not going to necessarily need to be attached. But as far as actual scheduling of work, of actually deciding who works on what when, well, once the story's been produced, it has a review date again, right? And that review date constantly needs assessment, right? Okay, well, this needs lower priority, this needs more priority. But the intent is that a story wouldn't be in the backlog if it's not ready to be worked upon. So every piece of work in the backlog should be there. Well, essentially, the planning system, the planning components, have a natural backlog of the review date, right? So the review date on the planning items is the priority. The initiative that they're part of, again, I think is important to visualize progress, right? Where are these, right? Are there any past due, right? Are there any past due planning items? Are there, so an initiative as a whole has kind of, it could be a color scheme potentially, right? Where it's like, oh, these initiatives are red because their planning items aren't updated properly. So they can kind of, be used to track, time priority as such, but they're not really. I don't want to focus too much on the time priority because that's not a concern of this. I think you can generate them, I guess. Some of them you can, others you cannot. So your planning is essentially the gap between a ticket being raised and becoming play ready, rather than defining when a ticket should be planned. Yes, exactly. So the planning is because we often miss on this piece. We often miss on the requirements gathering phase, and this needs to have the potential, not necessarily has to be, but it needs to have the potential for evolution of stories, of those requirements, right? So they can be thought out, pushed back on, so that a story that goes into the backlog, into the development backlog, is a story that can be worked on because it's well defined, right? Whether it should or not is not a concern, right? So you might say, okay, well, and again, the review date, even when it becomes a story, is the concern of the people deciding what work needs to be done, right? So if you say, okay, well, that story, we can't work on that until next month, so let's push the review date back to the beginning of next month. On maybe you can label and say, hey, push the review date of all stories in this initiative back to the beginning of next month, so that they fall down the schedule, right? Oh, don't use my my mind map as an intent. It is literally the brainstorm. Is it initiatives and input into planning, then into planning? No. Well, planning as a whole. I mean, an initiative is created. An initiative is not required, right? So a planning item can be a planning item. An initiative could be a set of planning items. Assignment, promotion, reporting, review date. Yeah, so a planning item has a review date. It can be attached to project. It can be labeled as having been associated with projects. This is again just a organizing tool, because obviously you don't necessarily know what project it's going to be assigned to until you actually get through the planning phase, right? It has requirements, right? Requirements have attachments, have notes. The planning item can have notes. The planning item has a status. Is it in progress? Is it cancelled? Has it been promoted? Right? Are initiatives a kind of an equivalent to a Jira Epic? Yeah, probably. Yeah. Um, um, yeah, because epics actually are falling away from. We don't use epics in our organization. And I think the problem is that an epic normally has an expected completion date, whereas an initiative, and I didn't deliberately do that, by the way. I wasn't even thinking of epics when I thought. I just knew that initiatives are a grouping of planning items because they're kind of a longer term goal, right? So yeah, initiatives, epics, yeah, I think they're kind of synonymous, right? Um, So a planning item can be attached to an initiative. It doesn't have to be attached to an initiative. A planning item has a status, and again, promoted is this planning item is now, so the notifications and stuff stop happening on the review date if this is promoted, right? Because it's done. This planning item is essentially now sat there as completed, and is no longer needed to be active. So what does initiatives need in addition to planning? And I think you want a Kanban board or some kind of buckets to choose from. Neat. We use epics as the future initiative, yeah. Well, again, do you want a Kanban board? Like, and that's why I'm doing this piece, right? I'm doing this piece to brainstorm so that I can decide whether, what do I want this to look like, right? What do I actually want this to be, right? Because I think those visuals will help not only me push forward if I can figure out some of the visuals. So, you know, I don't want to do this necessarily because it's not something I find a great. I find the visual aspect terrifying, and I find the visual aspect is going to be a big time sink. But I think having some of that visual aspect down, thinking about these workflows, will allow me. And it was like Chris from a rock guy that actually kind of made me think, maybe I do need to spend a bit more time here. I threw all my code smells onto a board to figure out what maintenance was there. And that actually brings up another point. Is the planning item at all? So I'm not thinking about the individuals here, right? I'm not thinking about this becoming Trello or another planning tool. So if you're a streamer who uses boards, etc., that's not the people that I'm aiming this at, right? Because everyone I've seen use Kanban boards or use tooling to track their work has a very different way of doing it. Some of them, like Fullbox, integrates into Godot, the planning board. I don't remember what you do, Apex. But there's the Kanban board in Godot. Some people use that. Some people just use it on a piece of paper, right? So I don't think I'm aiming for this to be a solo thing. So I've got to think about this in the team perspective. Like the ticketing piece, I use Codex. The ticketing piece, that's clearly a business oriented problem. That's not an individual does not need a full ticketing system, right? The planning piece, again, this piece I think is not necessarily for a solo person. This is a team based product, and even the story piece afterwards is I'm not building this for the smaller group, right? I'm building this for a company who has the need to develop software from the ground up, right? I gotta head to work though. Looking forward to initiatives being flushed out though. Good luck all. Thank you, Dota. Thank you for the feedback. It really does help me at least refine this, so I appreciate it very much. Have a great day at work. So the visualization, as Dota mentioned, like the Kanban board, or I think that comes down to the planning items, because again, the initiatives are a management tool essentially. The planning item are product management team tool, right? They're not. They're not. I was reading through that yesterday. So the visualization aspect of this is going to be challenging, because I think initiatives are kind of groupings that have a set of planning items sat underneath them, and the planning items show progress. And if all planning items are in progress, or all planning items are promoted and or cancelled, or cancelled, not and or, then is an initiative complete? Does it have completion? Right? Is there a defined completion? Actually, that kind of goes hand in hand in that, right? So there's no expectation that initiative will have time. And this is the problem with epics, right? If you've used epics in Jira, they are defined. Actually, let's make sure I understand. Right, epics. An epic is a body of work that can be broken down into specific tasks called user stories based on the needs, requests of customers or end users. Epics are an important practice for Agile and DevOps. When adopting Agile and DevOps, an epic serves to manage tasks is a defined body of work that is segmented into specific tasks called stories or user stories, right? So based on the needs, requests of customers and users. Epics are a helpful way to organize your work and to create a hierarchy. The idea is to break down work into shippable pieces so that large projects can actually get done and you can continue to ship value to your customers on a regular basis. Epics help teams break their work down while continuing to work towards a bigger goal. Maintaining agility when organizing large tasks like epics is no small task. Learning how epics relate to a healthy agile. Okay. So yeah, epics come from literature, which is like a journey across a few books of stories. So in a theory, an epic should have an endpoint. Right. But not by that definition. I mean, essentially it has an endpoint in that when the work is done, right? And that's the problem why epics aren't always suitable, because we have these kind of open-ended things. And again, the reason I'm breaking this down is I'm not trying to reinvent Agile. I'm not trying to reinvent the Agile Manifesto. I'm not trying to reinvent these terms. What I'm trying to do is provide clarity at the right pieces so that the work that we do can be broken down. So maybe on the other side, right, a story might be considered part of an epic, but it doesn't care. You don't care as a developer, right? The epics. The problem we have is the tools merge the needs of the management with the needs of the developer, and they're more. I have no water, no coffee. This is not good. The tooling we have, Jira or whatever, is more focused on the management aspects than it is on the actual work piece. The actual piece that a developer cares about is the slimmest component of the entire system, right? And I apologize for ads if you hit by ads. So as a developer, you don't care if you don't necessarily care. You might care, but you don't generally care about how many stories are in epic, or how many items there are as part of an initiative, or whatever. You might care about the vision, but you don't care about that. And that's what this planning is meant to do. It's not meant to be a reinvention of the wheel, right? It's meant to be a refinement step to make sure the information gathered is useful by the time it becomes a story. Is that supposed to be designed for application making it? Morning, Frostone, by the way. Not sure I follow. And I overemphasize supposed. I'm sorry. I made that sound more emphasized. What I'm trying to do right this second is trying to make sure that I am doing a bit of brainstorming on what I want my Agile platform to be, and work towards figuring out some workflows by looking at some tools, because I've had this realization that I need to spend a little bit of time focusing on how the application works, not just how it functions in the back end. So I'm putting a little bit of effort there, because it's going to be it's going to be challenging for me. So what we're talking about right now is planning items and initiatives. So I agree with you, TBD. It wouldn't make sense to give someone a book where they have to gather information before they can dig into it. That's why I like the initiative idea. Gotcha. Yeah. Hello, Thindle. How are you doing? Well, this tool right now is Excalibur, and I'm using it as a mind mapping tool, because I didn't want to mess around with mind mapping tools on stream. I started and then realized I was going to get stuck on licensing or other things, and I was like, nah, I'm not going hunting for the right mind mapping tool. I'll just use Excalibur. No worries. Okay, I was wondering if that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm just trying to take some time to kind of brainstorm through my ideas so far. I have tried Miro. Miro was actually down. It was down when I went to look at it, so I was moving on quickly. I wanted to get to this phase. I've used it before, yeah. So it threw up an Nginx error when I went to it. So okay. So an initiative can have one of many planning items. It doesn't have a defined time frame. It doesn't have completion. You might mark it as completed later, but there's no end goal. It can be added to over time. You decide when the initiative ends. From a progress perspective, you would want to know the stories that have been produced ultimately, so you'd want to report on that fact that a story under initiatives has been completed, or where it is. So visibility might be a problem, might be a visualization challenge there. How do I think about that? How do I term that? Because again, that's kind of a question for me out there right this second. So what I'm doing is I don't know if you've seen much of it. I've been building my own Jira, and I am at the point where I'm building features, and I had a bit of a realization after watching a video of another developer the other day that I kind of took the approach of, I won't spend too much time in the front end, right? I won't worry about what it looks like. I'll just make it just do a thing, right? But then I realized that if I don't spend some time thinking about this, then I could end up building a bunch of features in the back end that they work, and I've kind of thrown together the front end for them, but I've not thought about how they work and why they work and the workflows through there. Right. So I want to take some time to kind of identify what it is I want to build, from this perspective at least, right? Just not the entire application as a stack, because there's way more involved. But what do I want to build, and then what do I want it to kind of look like? I don't have to get it perfect, but at least have an idea of those workflows, because they're going to dictate, whether I like it or not. Some of that's going to dictate how I do things on the back end, or decisions I might make. So I'm trying to make sure that I am covering all my bases as best I can, knowing that that's not perfect either, right? Because it never is. So what we're talking about right now is we just had a kind of conversation on the concept of initiatives, which kind of equate to epics. It's just terming it differently. But it's I'm not making this component work related in terms of this doesn't generate anything from within here that is work to be done, right? It is all thought. It is all planning, and that's the purpose of the planning component, is to try and get those concepts, those definitions out of the product management team before they give it to the developer. Because the more you think about it, every single component of these tools is built for tracking and management. It's not built for the developer. GitHub is the developer tool, right? And obviously the development environments, etc., and the code itself. But the work to be done is, if you can make that nice and clear for the developer, then you can move forward constructively and you can move forward effectively because you've got clear requirements. I use Azure DevOps for my own projects and kind of love it. Yeah. Azure DevOps is kind of, it's got some useful workflows, but it's quite adaptable, I think. Azure DevOps, like, it's very, very, very flexible to what you want it to be. So yeah. So again, what I'm trying to do here is build out this planning system where a product manager can come in, they can say, okay, well, I need to add a new planning item. And again, this workflow right now is one maybe this does work, right? Well, Jira, and again, right, you look up the Agile Manifesto, which I hate typing the word manifesto into Google, right? Individuals and interactions over processes, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan, right? And what happens is we as human beings tend to like to do this to fix this, right? We tend to want to put processes and tools in to fix where we're broken, right? Because we don't like this. And a lot of us like that. We like to be individual. We don't like the interaction necessarily. And if you take developers like to get on with the job in general, right? They don't like to sit. Most developers, I'm not saying all developers because that's a lie. Most developers don't like to sit and talk about things. They like to go off and do the code. And tools like Jira come along and they try and formalize this process. But then because, and it's the same thing with software, right? If we look at the way I've designed the platform, right? This is my version of clean architecture. It's close, but I bet it's not. I bet some people who've done this a few times will come in and say, oh, I don't like that. Oh, that's not right. I don't agree with the way you've done that, right? But it's working. And that's the same problem with Jira, right? We go in and we're like, oh, well, we want to do it this way. And okay. And they don't quite understand how it was intended to be used. And they make up a process, or they added some labels in, or they mod, like you said, they can be modded. And it just makes it harder. So that process starts to become the weight around our necks. So what this is intended to do is kind of gather that information, right? And I don't think it should need to be too configurable, right? Maybe there's the ability to add labels or reporting components on there. But again, the things I focus on, right, the things that my application differs by is this and this, right? These are my differentiators. So the review date is something that will keep reminding people, hey, you need to look at this, and it won't remind the developers necessarily because the developers don't care. The notifications will be configurable in such a way that you can kind of watch what you care about, right? So again, and this will take a great deal of time, but it is in my dreamt up list of features, a priority in that you'll be able to say, okay, I want to know about changes to the initiative. I want to know when a planning item is added to the initiative. Okay. How do you want to know about that? Do you want to be emailed? Do you want to get it in a summary? Do you want to get it as an alert? What do you want, right? So you can be told about the system changing, about things being added, and you can be told in a way that you want to consume it, right? If you don't want to review that, then that's on you, right? If you fail to see something because it's lost in the noise because you've signed up for everything, that's a user problem, right? But I want to focus on that notifications and that visibility aspect of things, and the review dates are a mandatory component of this system, right? And again, for the reason of developers are often tasked with, oh, where are we on this initiative? Where are we on this? Where are we on the code cleanup or whatever, right? The developers shouldn't have to care about that. Developers should be off working, and so most of the tooling is not at the development level, which is why I'm focusing on planning first. So, being able to label, to tag things. Again, the project's here, right? This is not a firm link, right? This is, he says, as he can't even remember where his own app is. When I do this, I'm labeling it, right? So if I scroll down to here, I can see, oh, planning and tenant management. These are labels. So on here, I could filter by planning and tenant management and see the planning items associated with that. I could also filter on the initiative, right? But the initiative doesn't necessarily tell me which projects it's going to end up in. So, story, ticketing, and tenant management, the requirements of this would be across there. So you could use an initiative to track a bunch of these things, a planning item to try and figure out, here's what I want it to look like. And then when you talk to the developers go, well, that requirement lives in that piece of the system, and this requirement is this piece of the system. So let's create two stories, and that goes to team A and this goes to team B. So it's very much about getting those requirements down and figured out before they become part of a developer's backlog, and it looks bad for the developer because the backlog growth and the backlog size looks like the team is not achieving what they need to achieve, right? They're not making a dent in it if product management is constantly adding new stuff in there and most of it is fluff. So yeah, that is what I'm doing. This is the goal for this stream. So it might not be the most interesting stream from Codewise. If you're new to the stream, you're more than welcome to ask questions. You're more than welcome to engage with this. I am more than happy to demonstrate the application as a whole and talk about the code. It's just I do feel this is an important thing to bring to stream because it is a part of the process, right? It is very much a challenge we all come across at some point. Is what are we actually doing? And the irony is, I'm playing the part of the person who does bad. I'm actually doing badly at the part that I'm trying to evolve, right? So maybe by the end of this, I'll be much better at planning and be able to understand requirements in a different way, and that will educate me in a way I don't have right now, right? I'm trying to solve a problem that I know exists, but I don't know how to fix because I'm not doing that job. And so the interesting test of this, and again, it's why I'm focused on this piece right now. So I'm going to go back over here in a second and start looking at some designs. The intent of this would be to get it to work, make a workflow that I feel is in fitting with other applications in so much as the logical flow through the application, the visuals, etc. match, and then put it in front of someone and see if they can use it. Right? Can they actually create an initiative? Can they create some planning items? Can they actually promotion would be a future piece because I don't think the story part is definitely not ready, and the promotion would be a challenge. But at least if you can get the planning items together, that's useful. Okay, so I'm not signing up for accounts at other applications. So mobbing is the tool I'm using to look at the way, and that is, I mean, there's many other options as well. But mobbing is, going to run me back in 50-ish minutes, give or take. Can't trust traffic times and like that. No worries, Froston. Be safe. Um, yeah, there's many tools like this, but yeah, this is the one that I kind of subscribe to so that I can actually access it all. So one of the things that Dota mentioned, right, was, maybe a Kanban board, maybe some sort of tracking board for the initiative. I think he said initiative. And all the planning items, right? The planning items, again, they do have kind of swim lane style behavior, right? These two are completed statuses, though, right? A planning item, once it's created, is by default in progress. So there's no, oh, it needs to be picked up and worked on, right? It is in progress. It just has a review date that you keep moving. So the goal would be very much, hey, I create a new planning item. Here's my first review date, right? My first review date is, let's say, the 19th. No, how dates work in the United States. How to use a keyboard. 4. There we go. Right. So the review dates are very much that thing that hey, this list is going to get prioritized based upon what you need to review next, not what you think or an alphabetized list. You can filter it, you can sort it, but the intention would be it would very much visualize, and that's again what I've got to figure out, right, from other tools, like what this one is past due, right? So maybe it's a sorting label, maybe it's a kind of grouping of, okay, these are past due. You need to kind of prioritize these now. And maybe the initiatives or whatever, there's a report that will highlight to everybody, where we are on planning items, right? There's X number past due. Then you want to do something about that, right? So, I'm always open for, by the way, if you have experience of this, if you've gone through the product management grinder from time to time, do you see anything on here that doesn't work? Do you feel there are things that could be done differently? I'm not looking to steal ideas. I'm looking to kind of share experiences, because again, my experience has been several really valiant attempts with many fails at doing this sort of stuff, and I just want to kind of, I want to build something that's useful to you as a developer. Also helps clarify for the business, where planning and stuff is. And I haven't seen anything like this. Yesterday we learned about Herd, was it? Herd? Can't remember what the other one was. So, mobbing allows me to look at the workflow. So they've captured this. This is Monday.com as of April 2023. So it's a year old, but I can look at flows. So I can look at these different flows. Okay, so social content, adding and creating. Let's go to adding and creating. Creating a board, adding emojis, adding descriptions, adding a task, adding an update, adding a line, adding a table, adding a checklist. So you can add these components into these stories. but that's very much detail. Adding a new group. So where's the workflow here? So we add a new group. Add a task. So we add a new group, add a task. See, this I kind of like. I kind of like this. I don't like the collapse though. Like, I like the labeling. There's a bit too much color. The layout is nice and readable, right? And this is common. What I'm finding is there's a lot of light mode stuff. So we can do that in there. Dark mode Jira, please. Jira does have a dark mode, right? But and again, is dark mode a big problem if you're barely using the application, right? Because my ultimate goal is that you as a developer sign into this to see your work. Other than that, you don't really care. So from a licensing perspective, right, your product team is the ones that care the most about this, right? If you actually think about it, other than when you sit with product teams and go through requirements, etc., how much do you use Jira, or how much do you use the tool you use? Screens. And I'm focused on the web right at this second, because the web, this application is not an application where you really want the mobile experience. You don't need to be doing planning through a mobile phone, right? Okay, so let's go and look at screens. Let's go back and discover more productivity. Data management for normies. And if there's any, if anybody's watching and has some good applications, I'm more than open to that as well. So yeah, let me know. Okay, so this is Microsoft Loop. What is Microsoft Loop? Collaboration software. Microsoft Loop. Loop.microsoft.com. Sign in. That's pretty simple. Okay, that's not really what I want to focus on. We don't want Microsoft Loop. people management, build your company workspace with no code, modern business planning. To-doist. Miro. There you go. Toggle looked interesting. Toggle track. Height was the other one. A non-autonomous project collaboration tool. That looked interesting. People management software. Presentation software. So another good option to look at would be CRMs, right? Because content management is the same sort of stuff. There's not many of them in there. Customer support. Collaboration tools, not really. Productivity and CRM are the closest I can think of. Jira is not in here, by the way. I don't believe. Yeah, Jira is not on here. No code app builder. There's Toggle again. Finally, an intelligent CRM. Do you think its users agree with that? Fiverr, Trello, manage your teams work. Asana, here we go. A new one that I haven't seen before. Okay. Ooh, with a dark mode. Or kind of a dark mode straight away. Less bright white screen. This is one of the things I was kind of looking at, right? Obviously mine is blue and green and white right this second, so it's quite a shock visually. A lot of these applications use a white, mainly white canvas to work off of. But I have no objection to using less white on the screen and more colors to tone it down and narrow the focus. So adding a project goal, creating a new project. Here we go. Okay. Do you have the prototype? Yes, you do. Okay. So we go to create project, blank project, use a template. Let's go to blank project. We give it a name. We continue. Okay, so then it becomes, so that looks like Slack. That basically is Slack, isn't it? Down the side. So then we have a project where we have a whole load of options. And we can add tasks. Okay. Project detail. Okay, so we go to overview. So overview. So that's not bad. The start. This is an idea. So if you had an activity feed, now I've got to figure out the right tool to gather these ideas. And I'm not looking to rip off other applications. I'm looking for inspiration, right? So if I think about this as an initiative, and this is the status of the initiative with a feed of actions performed, that's not bad, right? And to show the status, that's a good idea. So I kind of like that one. So do you want to see the store the so if we go kind of like that, so Asana back comments, status on the right. So using more of the visual space is definitely something that I need to be I need to keep in mind. Like, I don't want to just narrow the text to the screen. I also don't want to just spread everything out, because again, that's not readable in the same. So there's a nice delineation there with the grey panel down the right. You've got the header up here that's all to do with the project. The status I like the idea of, because again, it will show. I kind of like the status idea. Obviously, this isn't labeling it right this second, but that would be good, because it would say, hey, you know, if all the projects are overdue, then the initiative is off track, right? Just to use their words there. If it's all, you know, it's been reviewed, there's lots of work completed, etc. But, you know, this idea of having this activity feed is also kind of useful, right? Because you can see, oh, no one's touched this initiative in 3 months. Status on the right is an interesting idea with the actions feed. Yeah, I like that. Creating a new project as well. Right, if we start here, having this wizard style approach, I kind of like that idea. For the initiative, again, the project has a board, a timeline, a calendar, etc. The initiative doesn't need that. The planning item, I don't think that fits very well with the wizard style either. But there's no pop-ups here. That's so. What happens when I add a project goal? Here we go. So we add a goal. We start typing. We add that connected goal. Okay, so how do we create a goal? Creating a project brief. Creating a new task. Here we go. So we go, let's go to the prototype. We go to task, and it gives us this private notepad. We create the task in the project. Okay, I like these placeholder ideas. That's kind of nice. We've set a priority. We set it to high. It's off track. We add some text. We mention some people. We create the task, and the task goes added content. So the toast notification, and then the tasks. See, as a dashboard, my priorities here, that's not bad. But still, no real dialogues, just pop outs really, and more pop out than dialogue style. Attaching a screen recording, adding an emoji. Adding a goal. Like, again, you know, I'm not trying to rip these. I'm not trying to rip off. I'm just trying to. Okay, so add a goal. enter the goal name, time period. Okay, that's not a bad idea. Progress source projects. This is an expert system. There's no way you're getting through this without some training. And there you go. So we've added a goal of increased, and then you have my workspace goals. So however that lives. Okay. So in general, I like Asana. That is a nice tool. There's lots of cool stuff to take in there. Like for me, I don't know the best way of tracking some of this stuff. Like what is my way of remembering some of these things? Do I create a document and just paste screenshots in? Do I kind of highlight what I like, what I don't? All sorts of stuff to worry about. Yeah, I mean, again, if anyone has any experiences, any thoughts on what I'm doing, I'm more than happy to talk about this. Especially positive experience you've had with tools. So I feel that my experience has been one of, picking up something like Jira and trying the best to make what we do fit, and then trying to make the tool fit at what we do, and going back and forth is challenging. So Monday.com here. Monday.com to me is a little bit too busy and very colorful. So we go to flows, social content, adding and creating content, right? Creating a board, adding a task, adding a new group, adding a dashboard view. Again, I'm not too worried about dashboards right a second. Adding a workspace. So let's go. So one commonality, this left-hand navigation is very much standard, right? Having this left navigation to try and put things that you find useful is clearly a way. So a main workspace, add a workspace, we create the workspace, we add it. We are now have a workspace. That looks like Confluence. Adding a workspace description, add a workspace description, type it in there, done. Okay. Adding a new folder. So again, this is an organizational tool, so I don't think that's really what I want to do. To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a website where the menu like that is on the right-hand side. I wonder how that would make me feel. Yeah. Good morning, Andres. How are you doing? I think, again, looking at the tools that I'm looking at, right? So, my version of this, right? I used a prototype, a template that had left-hand navigation, and it kind of fit. I left this in there to kind of prompt me to what it's going to do. But these tools definitely have that commonality in that this left-hand side is used as kind of a quick access for things you might want to do, right? Creating a new team. So I have a whole idea on teams as well. That's a whole different challenge. Typically reading the F pattern on web pages, so it makes sense to have the left-hand nav. Oh yeah, no, I meant like in general. I think we used to have that sort of menu on the left that I wonder how my brain would respond to being on the right. Yeah, and yeah, like Apex is saying, there is an actual science to how we look at content, right? I always remember you've got to try and focus people's eyes, and based upon the site you're building, you have different rules, right? If someone needs to be on your site, there's a few different things you can do still to help them through it, to make them logically flow through the site. I assume what you're talking about, Apex, is kind of reading across, then down, and then out into the content, right? Your eyes are scanning in that F pattern. But if you're trying to market to someone, you have a few seconds to grab them. If you're giving someone a tool to work with, that's a different challenge, right? Because you don't need to sell them because they have to be there. Yeah. Filtering and sorting. So again, Monday to me is very colorful, very bright. Um, Lots of they like having lots of tables everywhere, right? Again, the left-hand navigation, we got the workspace you're in, so that's not really a focus of what I'm doing, right? So again, what I'm trying to focus on is planning items and initiatives. Initiatives are a kind of grouping of planning items. Initiatives can be used to track progress against planning items, and again, when stories are created ultimately into the story system, initiatives will also indicate progress towards stories. So workspaces aren't something I really care about, but again, in terms of, I like this organization. So if you're doing planning items, I like the organization labeling of what are these tasks. Because I think prioritization, and my earlier prototypes played with that, right? That concept of this, grouping these by, okay, these are past due, these are, this one's coming up, this one's past due, this one's past due. So right now it's not sorting them by this, right? But, very much is. This grouping sort of works for me. Again, a lot of colour, a lot of pastel-y colours on here, not very bold. And again, it's an expert system, right? This is not a system that you go into and like, I'll just figure my way around it. So you can filter by, status is done. Okay. So the filtration, again, that's pretty cool. Oh, I don't like Monday.com already. Monday.com is measuring in time. Actually, that's another thought as well. Are planning items wishy-washy in so much as there's no expectation of when they will be ready? So review date is one thing, right? But is there so I suppose this goes to Dota's point in terms of like, okay, where are we these planning items? If they're not part of an initiative, what are they? right? Because, I mean, I would imagine that even product managers have timelines and agreed upon timelines, etc. So discoverability I just kind of triggered that. Discoverability would be the ability to say, hey, these things have been created. I want to know about things that are created, on these projects, or I want to know about things that are created. So it kind of goes into notifications. But in terms of, do you estimate how long a planning item is going to take, or is it kind of an open-ended thing with a review date and that's good enough? So for those who haven't been in the stream before or haven't seen this thing, what I'm trying to build is a project management tool, an Agile platform, as I keep referring to it as. And the idea is that as a developer, you don't care very much about the tooling, the planning that goes into the work that you're actually asked to do. What you care about is that planning is as thorough and as evolved as it can be, so that you get the most information and you cut down the assumptions, etc. So that by the time you get work to do, it is well thought out, it is well tracked, and most of the tools we use are management tools. So what I'm building is, I'm starting with the planning aspect of it, and I'm trying to brainstorm a little bit as to what do I actually want? What data do I want to collect? How do I want to collect it? How do they relate? And then I'm trying to figure out what workflows I like for how to achieve those things, so that I can start to prototype out a UI that at least tackles some of the problems that other applications suffer. And that right now I'm just kind of throwing things together, and it's not going to fit. So I am very much interested in any experience people have had of these tools, any thoughts they have on how they work. Not the tools, yourself. Like, how do you track your own work? If you work as part of an organization, what problems do you see? I must leave for work. Thank you for the stream. Apex, thank you very much for coming and hanging out. Glad to have you back. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. So, I don't want to make the stream all about me doing this. This is a development stream normally. Again, if anyone's interested, I'm more than happy to demonstrate what I do have from a code perspective. I've been building this application for the last 8 months, so there is quite a lot of code to look at. There's a lot of technology in place so far. This is a distributed system. There's many services. There's lots of events and messages going around already just to achieve what we've got so far. It is not open source at this point, as I do intend to make it an actual product. And the reason I'm streaming it is to share that journey, right? To share hey, I'm building an application. Come along for the ride if you like. So I'm using Mobbin to kind of get some influence on some of these things. Yeah, if there's any questions, let's have a look. Let's have a deeper look at Toggle. So I was looking at Toggle yesterday. Right. So onboarding, logging in, subscribing, inviting teammates, adding and creating content. Switching to dark mode is its own flow. Adding and creating content. All right. So creating a project and a client. Here we go. So this has a video. So create a project. Again, this is a pop-up. If we add a new client, we can type a name in there. And then we can create, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So we create a new project, we get the pop-up, we add them, and that's it. Okay. Adding a time entry, creating a favorite, creating a recurring project. We don't, yeah. So, what do I like about this so far? Adding a task. So I like the color. Again, we've got that left-hand navigation. This navigation is more menu navigation. There's not so much, tasks. There's no work appearing in here. It looks like you can collapse it, right? They like using pop-ups, which again, from my perspective, isn't too bad. Actually, that's not. The problem I'm trying to solve is if you've used Jira, if you've used any tool to do development of software with a team, we create stories. Stories go into the backlog, right? Oftentimes we put stories into the backlog that are placeholders, essentially. But we put them in there to try and remind us to work on them later. And the stories just sit there and we end up with a backlog that's growing and never really getting completed. And yeah, work does get completed, details do get added, but we're incentivized to just try and do the bare minimum. So this entire planning item concept is one of gathering details. So is providing the planner the tooling. So the thing that talking about there is tasks. The planner might not have enough definition to create a planning item. They might have to go off and do certain things first, right? So they might need to track, hey, I need to do certain things to get this information together, right? I might need to reach out to so-and-so. I might need to do things. So is tasks something that's useful to this process? Is the ability, I mean, I know I'm growing the scope of work here, right? I'm adding to my thing, but tasks are tasks would be a way to help the planner get their stuff together enough to actually do the planning. So giving them the tools to actually track things they need to do. I mean, they could write them down just as easily as they could add them into the application, but having them as there as well would not be a terrible idea, right? Because again, let's look at this. So we go to tasks. We go to add a task. We enter a task name and we save it, and that's it. Right, initial call with client. Right, it has progress. It has. I mean, that's time based, but I'm not looking at it from that perspective. But it's a simple reminder. It could be, oh, go and grab documents from so and so, or do this from so and so, etc. You could associate it with a planning item if the planning item has been done, but it's also reminders to do things that are not necessarily the plan. you don't want to document them under the planning item. Maybe you just want to do something that is attached to that. So this is worthwhile thinking about. And tasks would only go for the plan. They're an individual thing. They're not shared. They're not visible. They're not part of the work. Well, they're visible, but they're not necessarily something that everyone needs to see or be associated with. So, okay. So I think I'm getting there in terms of my understanding of what it is I want to do. So the next step would be to me to try and figure out some workflows through here. So I'm going to continue to look at mobbing, and then maybe tomorrow. I really wish there was a good tool for kind of generalizing a UI UX without actually building. I don't want to get into the CSS and the HTML weeds because that will bog me down. I know it will. And I get bored. That's going to be my biggest challenge. How do I do that without getting bored of it? And again, I'm no visual artist, so how do I achieve that is going to be a challenge. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I am more than happy if anyone has any questions or would like to know more about this, then there is a Discord. I do stream this at least 3 days a week, mainly development, right? So the development is broken down into these core components of the system, and so I really do benefit from trying to work on this and figure out what I actually want and what I need, because it will allow me to build the back end in a more solid way in the future. Of course, an ad break's died. So, okay. I'll look something up. Okay. Okay. So, mobbing, get some focus on this. Get some firm examples together. I don't think I'm going to get to UI design necessarily too deep. Again, I'm scared of doing that part, because if I get bored, I'm going to be in trouble, right? I'm going to lose my attention quickly, because it's just going to get hard. We did have a conversation yesterday where Deflux was pointing out I probably need to just get a library, use a tool set, a library such as Syncfusion, and build the application using known tools. Even if I'm building in Angular, or even using a different UI framework, it wouldn't make a difference. I still need to build out the tools, and with everything else to do, trying to build everything myself in Tailwind is actually slowing me down quite substantially. So it doesn't benefit me to necessarily build those things. So yeah, I appreciate everyone hanging out. I appreciate the contribution. Let's do, this is planning item. I'm at May 2024. I will be back tomorrow. I will try and do more of this off stream so that there's more interesting things to do on stream. But I'll be trying to keep moving this forward. Thank you for hanging out, Mr. Johns. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to raid Soft as in software today. He's doing he's renewing his Azure certification, so we'll go and hang out with him for a little bit. Someone I haven't raided before, so I like to do that. And hopefully introduce people to new streamers as well. So thank you very much. Take care. Have a great rest of your day if I don't see you around, and see you later. Thank you all.